is real. Listen.
Hi, I'm Traci.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is Curious Explorers. Hi, Kath.
Hey, Trace.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Long time no see.
I know. We have so many things to update our beloveds, our beloved listeners.
Yes.
That's right. Including the fact that I finally got to see you at your new home on the Cape.
That's right.
Like, so fun. Totally enjoyed the
intrepid traveler came all the way up.
And people who don't know me might surmise this anyway, but I'm not someone who loves driving long distances or all the things that come with that. But we're going to get into some of that kind of stuff in this episode.
Right.
So before we get started on our episode, which I'm going to describe as maybe ghost stops and haunted highways.
Ooh, I like that.
I wanted to just quickly let people know that we actually did do our giveaway. It wasn't just like a sham giveaway. And Laura K, like initial K, because I'm not using her last name, but was the winner. She didn't guess correctly, but you didn't have to guess correctly to win. But I want to tell everybody that whoever has been following the show might know that our contest for our giveaway was to tell us your favorite cryptid. Doesn't have to be New Jersey cryptid, right? But tell us your favorite cryptid and who you think I'm related to. Because during our live recording, we recorded with each other, of course, and the hosts of the Severed True Crime podcast, which is amazing. So the question was, who's my actual relative, my cousin? Is it the Kathy A. Kelly, right? People could get, somebody did guess that. Is it Drew Hudson or Harry Chambers from the Severed True Crime podcast? So the answer, drum roll, I'm going to have to put a drum roll in here, is actually Drew Hudson.
Yay!
So, yay, woo! And no one guessed that. I did have a Harry Chambers guess, and I can see why. I also had a Kathy Kelly guess.
Which I don't get, but okay.
Yeah,
might have
maybe
come
it's the
up.
hair.
Might have come up. I don't know.
It's the stature.
Yeah.
It's a love of ghostly things.
Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was excited to see you this past weekend, Memorial Day weekend. It was like, I think you and I are paler after Memorial Day than we were going.
I don't know. I don't know if you noticed it, but I did work in the yard today, so I'm a little bit. But it was a very rainy Memorial Day weekend up here,
and cold, but worth
the
it.
whole East Coast. Yeah, but that's a great New England kind of vibe, you know. And you actually had to drive through all of that, so I really feel for you.
Oh my God. It was like pouring rain, wind blowing the car. And, as you get closer to the Cape, the roads get kind of narrower. And then there was water creeping in at the edges of the road. And I thought, I hope I make it. I don't want to be another ghost story. But I did. We had a great time.
We did.
You showed me the super mysterious exterior of the soon to be open to the public Sanctum Paranormal.
Yes, because I forgot my key, or you would have seen the interior as well. I didn't have a key on me.
Right. And, I want to tell our listeners to keep a lookout for Adam Berry's new YouTube podcast because he has a regular podcast.
He just launched a podcast called This Haunted Life, or A Haunted Life with Adam Berry. And he's doing a companion YouTube, kind of like a talk show, where I guess it's the podcast is kind of narrative, and then he calls it Afterlife, which I think is very cute. Afterlife is kind of like people from that subject kind of doing a deep dive into it. So I was there with Adam and Austin, who's a member of our team up here at Sanctum, and he's also
Austin Tyler.
Yeah, Austin Tyler.
Shout out Austin.
He's I think Adam called him a bon vivant, but which I think is appropriate, but he's just an all around great guy, and he's a big part of the community up here.
Yeah, no, the three of you were so great. It's such a great episode about basements,
Yeah.
but it's just such an easy and funny and a kind of a spooky discussion about basements.
Right.
And only the three of you could make that topic that interesting. But it was great. I got to sit in and watch the whole taping.
It was very tangential. We do a lot of like little offshoots. But it's a good episode, and it's I think it's on YouTube now, but I
I
encourage
think for
anyone.
Patreons members.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
think for Adam's
sure.
Patreon
Well,
members,
I
I
do
think.
know his podcast is up. And if you follow Adam on social media, I'm sure he's posted where it is. He does have a Patreon, so. But yeah, it's and the podcast is great. It's definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to give a shout out to Chad Rossi of P-Town Recording Studio. He was
He's so
great. He
lovely.
did such a great
Yeah, he's a
job. The
great guy.
studio's awesome. If anybody's looking for a great place to record music or podcast, that's the place.
He was very sweet too. He's a really nice man.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's funny, you were cracking me up because, the weather's crazy and, I'm like thinking, all right, let's just buckle down and still enjoy Provincetown restaurants and other places on the Cape and the shops. I bought way too much fudge for Jay,
A lot of fudge.
who's
There was a lot of
plowing
fudge.
through it. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
good.
delicious.
It's like scarier than the ghost stories. But Kathy, you did want me to go see the spot where some grisly murder took place.
Yeah.
I'm glad I missed that.
Well, had I thought of it earlier, you wouldn't have.
I
Had I thought of it earlier in the day, because you have to drive in these backwoods. It's a cemetery. It's still operational, although I don't think there's been any new burials in like the last 10 years, but it's not off. It's off the beaten path, and you kind of have to know where you're going. And by the time I thought of it, the sun was already going down. And
It was freezing.
it was cold, and I was just like, well, we're probably not going to make that today, but we'll definitely do that another
Next year.
time.
It'll
It
still
was,
be there.
I don't know if it was, I know the one that I told you. I actually, on my other podcast, I had done it years ago. But it is still very much a kind of taboo or complicated subject in Provincetown, because
Yeah.
there's still members of his family of the victims. He's buried in an unmarked grave that I found with Christina Terry. You know Christina.
Yeah.
We were like, we're gonna figure out where he is, and we did. We found him. But it would have been good to get you out there, Trace. I'm gonna have to plan that
know.
for a. I don't mind going out at night, but it was a little bit rainy too, so it was like, I don't know if I want to
Yeah.
be traipsing through the backwoods of Truro, North Truro and Cape Cod, in a nor'easter. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
I do.
really.
I'm not sure. I might.
You might.
But I'm 100% sure I wouldn't get Tracy out there under those conditions. Under those conditions, sunny and 72.
You're lucky I
maybe.
drove up.
I
Oh, we had a
know.
great time,
We
and
did.
maybe I'll come up for the opening or shortly thereafter, and then we can do some cemetery
Yeah.
tours then.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of cemeteries up here, so yes.
But so I wanted to crack you up because like I'm just like one of these people. Like I was like, oh, my body's hurting. Like I allow myself the only one stop max in each direction. So in that 6-hour trip, I have got to like make it. This is just a totally weird side. I might edit this out, but like I find rest stops scary because I don't love big public bathrooms where it might be kind of gross. So, but there are scarier things than dirty bathrooms.
Yes,
At these
definitely.
locations. And that's what I wanted to share with you today.
All right.
Even scarier. So
I stop more often than you do, so don't make it so I don't want to.
Anything I'm going to tell you about these rest stops will just make you want to go.
Exactly.
More.
They
You'll be
won't. They
stopping the
won't
whole
deter
way.
me. They won't. Now the bathrooms might, but if it's something scary in a different way, it probably won't.
Dirty bathrooms. Nobody likes that. So without further ado, again, ghost stops on haunted highways, that's the topic. So I learned in my research, because I was not, I was somewhat rest stop and highway naive.
Mm-hmm.
But because Kathy has kind of fantasy of being a trucker. I don't think
Fantasy
you're
is
going
a
to live it out.
strong word. Fantasy is
I
a strong
imagine
description.
wanting to be a trucker, but you love driving
I do.
and you love seeing the country and you're adventurous,
Yes.
especially compared to me. So I don't know that you're going to realize that dream in this life. Maybe you will, but I know that you love getting out on the open road and
Yeah.
seeing the world and the country. Perhaps you will see some of these places. So, what I did learn that I had no idea, and I don't know if you know either, I guess there are a lot of decommissioned rest stops
Hmm.
in the country. So they're also referred to as like ghost stops or ghost rest stops because I guess either routes get changed or new
Right.
highways go in or some bigger thing comes along. And so these places just get closed down, but they're not taken down.
Right.
Um,
So like ghost
so,
signs where you see, where you see signs on the side of buildings and they're called ghost signs because
oh,
they're not, they're just faded and they weren't painted over, but they weren't, repainted. So they're called ghost
yeah.
signs.
So interesting. So one of these that's more well known, and I'll put the links to all of these articles because I want to give people proper credit. But this is an article from an article by Ren Gudino at Signways. I guess they're a sign maker, a highway sign maker. But a lot of these companies have, I guess, produced or researched these cool articles. So I'll share some of the things from there. So this is Ghost Stop, a ghost stop. It's no longer in service, but it's also a ghost stop because it's supposedly haunted.
Mm.
It's the Diamonds Restaurant and Tri-County Truck Stop in St. Louis, Missouri, or right outside of St. Louis in Villa Ridge. And it says, you can no longer walk into the truck stop outside of St. Louis in Villa Ridge and get a hot cup of coffee and an open-faced roast beef sandwich with mashed potatoes on your plate. It's very vividly described. So the restaurant's long since closed. It's boarded up, but it reminds you that Route 66 used to get us all from place to place. And all night diners like these kept truckers fed and caffeinated and as content as one could possibly be during a very long, often overnight journey. There's a local historian who was interviewed for this article, Troy Taylor. He's a haunted historian,
I know
crime buff.
Troy. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
do?
of
Of
course.
course
Yeah,
you
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. He's out of Chicago. Troy's written a lot of stuff. He's been around for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to get him on the show.
Mhm.
But he's the founder of American Hauntings Inc., Inc. like INK. And he filled in some of the details about the Diamonds Restaurant and Tri-County Truck Stop. But according to Troy, the truck stop started experiencing hauntings around 1970, a great year. Customers and employees began telling stories of being touched by unseen hands, hearing voices, and seeing shadowy figures that clearly weren't there. And for decades, these stories continued. So people would report seeing objects moving on their own, lights and appliances turning on and off. I think even while the truck stop was in service.
Right.
Others claimed to see spirit people, like a man in a plaid shirt and tan pants, very specific, or a couple covered in blood. That sounds awful.
That might lead to a
Um,
ghost. Wait. I have a theory. I think I know how this started. Wait.
Really, like I
Wait,
wonder
hold on.
why.
Hold on. Something's coming to me. I think I might have figured this out.
Yes. And these seem very classic haunting-y kind of, signs. But by the 90s, the ghost stories were everywhere. Everybody knew about it. And local residents, this is kind of creepy, were claiming that ghosts were spilling out of the building and haunting other places, including their homes. So I'm assuming that the truck stop was still operational when this started.
Right.
But it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
But then I found also that this company, Bloom Services, that I believe hires and employs truck drivers. Also, I think people who hit the open road may very understandably be fascinated by the paranormal. And just as an aside, I remember on Coast to Coast AM, which I think is like the most popular overnight radio station. It might be in the world, but definitely in the United
Right.
States. But like they'll shout out to their truckers, and I guess
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot of trucker fans who are listening, during their overnight hauls. But anyway, So this article was 5 most haunted truck stops in the United States. Tell me if you've heard of any of these. So one is the Pilot Travel Center in Jamestown, New Mexico. Just as an aside, as you may remember, last September, I was in New Mexico for
Mm-hmm.
a few days for this conference, this thing to honor Lynn Buchanan. But I had to drive from El Paso to Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is like a good hour and 45 minutes. You're not seeing a lot of people.
Right.
You literally are seeing a lot of brush, tumbleweeds. So I'm not entirely shocked that someone, especially driving at night, might see some stuff, maybe just because they're not seeing a lot of activity. I don't know.
It's also UFO
But
territory. It's a big,
yes,
it's a big UFO area.
yes. And and that's what they said when we were there. But so the Pilot Travel Center in Jamestown, New Mexico is located along the widely considered haunted Route 66. So the story is basically, of course, not surprisingly, steeped in tragedy. Countless accidents and unexplained disappearances have happened along Route 66, and I guess in that area. A lot of truckers report pulling into this truck stop late at night. It's still operational, only to encounter flickering lights and cold drafts that have no source. Shadowy figures are spotted in the corner of the eye, and then they vanish when you approach them. Again, a lot of this is very classic haunting stuff. One trucker reported stopping to refuel and hearing whispers on his CB radio, but that didn't match any other driver on the road. But it's interesting because it says that the spirits of those who died in accidents along Route 66 continue to haunt the area. That's where people are, understand logically attributing the haunting activity to. And it's very isolated out there. It's kind of eerie feeling, but it's considered one of the most haunted truck stops in the Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
So add that to your
I
list,
was going to
Kathy.
say, in my head, I'm just like this. Okay, I could be out there in 2.5 days.
You do that. You can tell
I
me
would
all about it.
totally do a haunted rest stop road trip. 100%, I would.
That should be your spin-off series. And I actually, because there's actually enough here we can do a whole
there's
season
so much
on this kind of stuff.
And the other thing is just think of the people that you talk to get those stories. I mean, like the rest stops that are still existing, most of them are probably 24 hours. These are people who are super, super in tune with their environment because they don't have a ton of outside, they're in fairly isolated areas and with fairly small populations, and especially, the overnights, I don't know. I think that would be fascinating. I say
Yeah,
fascinating a lot, but
absolutely.
I mean it this time. I think that would be really, really fascinating.
Like I wasn't being honest the other
The
time.
other times,
Yeah,
it was just interesting, but this would be fascinating.
you do that. I think if you can get somebody to bankroll that series, it would be great.
See, I would
Kathy's
just go.
Haunted America.
I don't need to do it. Listen, if we can, if there's anyone out, listen, Pilot, if you're listening, or any other rest stop company, if you're interested, reach out to me if you want to sponsor me doing a haunted rest stop tour. I promise I will.
You would actually do it.
Oh, I would 100% do it.
I'll
I'm
watch
already
the
thinking
dogs.
like I'll get a camper. The dogs can come with me. I would 100% do it.
No.
They would love
Don't
it.
do
They
that.
would love being with me way more than if I left. I don't know. I could leave them with Tracy. They'd love it because Tracy
They
would
get a lot of treats.
yeah,
and
Tracy.
organic
They'd get a lot of
food.
treats.
And orthopedic beds.
Yeah. Well, now they have a
So-
king size bed, but
Well,
that's
that's even better. So this one, I'm not sure. Maybe you would go, but if you go, please bring. What is Adam's recorder? His digital recorder. That's
it's
like the one that
Panasonic
captures.
DVR. Yeah, it's the one from the mid-90s.
Yeah. So please bring that. You might not even need it. Who knows? Maybe it's so loud you don't need it. But this is called Screaming Jenny's Truck Stop. Very descriptive. Nothing left to the imagination. Screaming Jenny's Truck Stop in Waverly, West Virginia.
Yeah, this one I've heard of. Yeah, this
You
one I know.
have?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'll summarize it for our
Yeah.
audience.
No. I mean, I've heard the name because I've done the West Virginia haunted. Like a lot of the haunted
Yes,
stuff in
yes.
West Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah, and we covered that a while back a little bit. Although this wasn't on that tour,
It
I
might
don't
be.
think.
It might be. We don't know. You know what I mean? We didn't
Oh,
cover the
maybe.
entire thing. You don't know. But I did hear of that when I was going to Trans Allegheny and when I went to Point Pleasant. Like, you just kind of, it was ancillary to the other things that I was doing, but I don't know the details of it. I just have heard of it.
All right. Well, let me tell you.
Well, buckle up.
Whoa, buckle up.
See what I did there?
It's not subtle with the name Screaming Jenny's. So it says nestled near the railroad tracks. This truck stop is famous for one of the oldest ghost stories in West Virginia. Interesting, Screaming Jenny. And here's the story. In the 19th century, a woman named Jenny, this is horrible, it was tragically burned alive after her dress caught fire near the railroad tracks. I don't even know how that happens. Even in pioneer times, I can't fathom how that would happen. But that is the source of, the haunting, supposedly. But Jenny's ghost is said to haunt the area, screaming in agony. So truckers passing by late at night have reported hearing her screams echo across the parking lot. And they've even reported seeing her fiery apparition running alongside the tracks. One trucker shared that he stopped to check his brakes after hearing an unusual noise, only to see the ghostly figure of a woman engulfed in flames staring back at him from the rearview mirror. Why are rearview mirrors always creepy too? That's like
I know.
it's like a classic.
Yeah, that's like a closet door. You know what I mean? Where
Oh
you're like,
yeah.
is it gonna.
I mean, the story itself is
But
not
also, why
funny.
did
It's
she
just
get in?
horribly tragic.
Yeah, why did she get in? The funny thing is, though, there's a lot of stories of women.
Screaming.
Yeah, well, yeah, but of women dying and I don't mean ghost stories. I mean like I can think of a couple of historical stories where people had their dresses because they wore crinoline
Yes.
and they had very heavy dresses, and they probably also had some kind of not intentional fuel on the dresses, but they didn't wear clothes the way we did. So these things would
You
have
mean
been
like
far.
starch to iron
and
them
and I
or
and I mean like bacon grease, and I mean
Ooh.
like things, because they didn't change their clothes every day. So just because of the way life was, there would, and also e- every single piece of clothing that we wear is flame retardant, and it's flame retardant because they kept catching fire. I mean,
Yeah.
so we don't know what it's like, but it's true. There's just so many of them where, so many stories have that as part of it.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking a lot of times you would hear about that, like if somebody was in a house and an errant ember from the fireplace or
Right.
where they were cooking over a fire. That kind of makes more sense to me. I mean, I guess somebody could have been cooking
Oh, I'm
outside,
sure. I'm
but I
sure there
just,
was. I'm sure there was an open flame. I mean, an open fire. And a lot of times, especially if the rest area is near where there was some kind of a traveler's stop to begin with, you're going to, they were cooking outdoors. You know what I mean? They were cooking, they were barbecuing outdoors, they were cooking outdoors. So the idea that they were doing so, and they might have even been boiling water or, drying
ugh,
clothes, or, well, they wouldn't have been drying clothes, but who knows? But there were lots of
that's
outdoor,
horrendous though.
yeah, it was a horrific way to die. Yeah.
No, and those gowns, those outfits, those multi-layer outfits, regardless of the weather, you would have been wearing all kinds of undergarments and different layers to your dress, like you were saying. And that's not something you'd be able to get out of very
Right.
quickly or by yourself.
Right. What's interesting
So
to
it's
me
horrible.
about stories like this, though, are how little the environment has likely changed in order for people to still be experiencing. So let's say, because it sounds very residual to me.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
So if it's residual in nature, and again, we're making the assumption that residual things happen, which I think they do. But if it is residual in nature, because there's no interaction, and she's not like suddenly being like, oh, you know what, I'm not on fire anymore. Like she's not evolving or changing or anything like that.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, when the environment changes, when the kind of place that the memory is held, or the environment upon which things are recorded, as that changes or disintegrates or alters, the the residual energy dissipates. And
Yeah.
it would stand to reason then that the location has not changed all that much. And I think that's very interesting. Like I can think of one or two haunted kind of travel locations that are in like really big cities, but usually when you're talking about these, they're in these more kind of rural roots or more isolated places where things haven't changed all that drastically in 150 some odd years. It's like, yeah, you know, it's not the same tavern, but the hills are the same, the trees are the same. You don't have a big development that's moved in. And so even though there are subtle changes in it, the overall kind of environment has stayed the same. That's what I find really interesting. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about places like West Virginia, that's factual. You know, those places have been have been used in the same kind of way over an extremely long period of time without an enormous amount of development happening.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Remind me on another episode, speaking of places that haven't changed in a long time and are haunted, and then changing them dramatically maybe changes the residual haunting. I don't know. Remind me, we'll do an episode on haunted houses because, you know, I have had more than one, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of one in particular where there was like a whole lore to why it would have been haunted.
Right.
And then when we renovated, it definitely shifted things, didn't get rid of it
Oh,
completely,
I think
but
I remember you talking about this. Yes, you and I have discussed this. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
I think it's
Um,
just if anyone's interested, we will meet you all at Screaming Jenny's rest stop. Um it's gonna take about 12 hours to get there. Tracy, actually, it's gonna take me about 15 hours to get there. Tracy will get there first. But
oh no,
but we'll be there. We'll have a cup of coffee with
because
you.
I won't stop.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Tracy will only stop once. She'll only stop
I'm
the
only
one
allowed to
time.
stop once.
I stop several times, but
I public bathrooms are not that
I don't
sanitary.
really
That is
stop for
my
the.
only thing.
I honestly stop for the dogs. So I
Oh, well,
stop
you
for
have
the
to.
so that they and like I'll stop for gas, but I stop for the dogs. I don't really stop for me.
I stop for pretzels and like a Diet Coke or like gummy bears or some completely unhealthy road
What
appropriate
was it you
snack.
got the other night? It was like
Oh, Sour Patch
Sour Patch
watermelon.
Kids
Oh
things.
my God. It was so
And I
good.
had
It
had
is
a
so bad for you.
an old
So
fashioned,
good.
so I was like, yes, I will have that. But
You had like two of them. I think I ate like the whole bag.
I
It's
well,
so
that's because
good.
as soon as I got them, I was like,
It's so
they were
sour.
so sour.
But that is travel food to me. It's like, or like something like I generally eat somewhat healthy. Like my junk food. This is a complete tangent. My junk food is usually like fake veggie meat, which I know is not good for you, or
Which
engineered
is
bagels or
literally
something.
junk food, right? It's
It's
literally,
total
yeah.
crap. It's terrible. It's ruining my microbiome.
Yeah.
It's shrinking my brain. I hope not, but it might be. But no, travel food is like Pringles with Sour Patch Kids and a soda.
Wow.
It's like terrible.
I'm trying to think.
I'm amazed I made it.
I
It's
don't
like the highlight of the whole thing.
I don't do a lot of food on the road up. You know what I mean? Like I'll have like a, which is funny because I love crap and
That's what
I'll eat
keeps
that. Yeah.
me awake.
But I drive a lot more than you. You know what I mean?
You
Like
do.
I'm like I'll definitely have coffee, but yeah, you know. If
Yeah,
we
for
go
my
to West
health, I have
Virginia,
to
I
stay
will I'm going to tell you right
off the
now.
road.
If you will come to West Virginia and come to Screaming Jenny's Road Stop, which by the way is a great name for a bar.
So I was just thinking it's a great name for a cocktail.
Well, it's
The
that,
Screaming
yeah. So
Jenny. Yeah.
Screaming Jenny at Screaming Jenny's,
But I feel
rest stop.
terrible.
Um,
'Cause the
it's a
poor
spirit.
Jenny.
Oh my God, it's a spirit. There we go. That
Oh,
works.
all
See,
right.
oh my
Bottle
God,
that, Kathy.
we're all leaving. We're leaving this podcast and going headlong into marketing. We're just going to do all of the marketing for ghost spirits.
Well, remind me to tell you something about that too. We'll
All
come
right,
back to
all
that.
right. What's next? What do we have next?
So we have Love's Travel Stop in Gallup, New Mexico. I think you're noticing a theme here that when the population is not super dense and there's a lot of people passing through, more likely to have a lot of ghosts that don't get disturbed out of existence. So this is located near the Navajo Nation. So it's Love's travel stop in Gallup, New Mexico, surrounded by desert, Native American history, and supernatural lore. So the story is that truckers have long reported strange occurrences because it's a very remote truck stop. So this doesn't surprise me. Mysterious lights are often seen flickering in the distance, which I feel like people report in the desert anyway. Figures dressed in old fashioned clothing walking along the highway, which is a little interesting. Here's another instance of strange voices. So, strange voices being heard over a trucker's radio, but in a language he didn't understand. Although I feel like ghosts often, that stuff can come through kind of garbled, but this sounded like a language, but not a language that he spoke. And then it was followed by an intense cold feeling that kind of filled his cab, even though it was a very warm desert night. So people have hypothesized that the reason for all of this is it's near that Gallup, New Mexico is near sacred Native American lands, and the surrounding area has a deep history filled with legends of spirits, shapeshifters, and skinwalkers, whole other category. But so it's a combination. I think people get very primed for things like this, like you said, when they're driving. There's not a lot of other stimulation. There's also the history or the lore or the legends of the area.
Right. So everything
especially when
fills
there's
in. Everything
right.
kind of fills in the. Do you remember? I know your favorite. I know.
And also, sorry, a lot of road accidents, just so you know. So that
Which
could
is
be
also like I mean, think about it. You're not talking about an environment that has a lot of distracting you're it's just it looks the same for miles and miles. There's a hypnotic kind of
oh
quality
my
to it. So
God.
when you're talking about accidents, it's like a lot of times you have to be very careful in these environments that you
Yeah.
don't fall asleep, or you don't, you have fatigue, and you don't pay that much attention. But this does remind me of a case that they did on your favorite show, Evil.
Oh, okay. Do you want to summarize?
Well, it's almost the same thing. It's almost exactly the same thing. I think it ended up being a drone.
Maybe that's where they
No,
got
I
it
mean,
from.
well, maybe. I mean, I will say
Yeah, maybe that was an inspiration.
all of these, I think there are tons of this stuff. I do think it's really interesting, and I think it's something that we have to be super, super, super careful of.
Yes.
When we start talking about, when we start utilizing kind of our guilt and fear and just this general kind of angst around indigenous cultures and the things that happen to the indigenous people in this country, meaning that there's this whole kind of idea of like, well, this is happening because it was an ancient Indian burial ground.
Maybe, but maybe not.
You got to be really careful. We have to be super, super careful about that. I will say this though, on an earlier episode, we did talk about Navajo. We did talk about certain shapeshifters and certain different types of kind of cultural entities that existed with certain indigenous cultures. So when you said people are primed, I think there's also, we prime ourselves when we're in these kind of desolate areas where we know what the history was. So I'll say this. I remember being down in the Pine Barrens one time, years and years and years ago. And, I was out in the woods, and I was there with a bunch of people, and these people were Jersey Devil hunters, and, they heard a sound, and I was like, what's that? And if they had said to me it was the Jersey Devil, I would be like, okay, because I have no knowledge of anything that is going on in this college, in this environment. So I kind of had to trust the people who did know, and they were like, oh, it's an owl. So it's like, okay, that makes sense too. But a Jersey Devil made equal sense to me because my knowledge base was
Of
I
course.
didn't know it. I don't know an owl from the devil. But
And that's kind of what I mean.
yeah, exactly. So people are driving down this road, and it's scary, and also it's so desolate and isolated,
Mm.
that you're just kind of like on the edge of, either you're falling asleep because you've been on this for 400 miles, or you're on the edge of your seat waiting for something to happen, which is not to say that people aren't having these experiences. Just
Yeah.
what their interpretation of these experiences are might not be, or might not be something that we should jump right into and saying, oh, ancient Indian burial ground or whatnot.
Yeah. No, totally. Totally. So that's Love's travel stop. Now we are getting out of the Southwest because it's not the only place with haunted truck stops and rest stops. Iowa 80 truck stop in Walcott, Iowa. Just here's a bit of trivia. I didn't know this. Maybe you did, Kathy, because you know so many things, almost everything. But this is known as the largest truck stop in the entire world. Did you know
Really? I
that?
did not.
Yeah.
Iowa.
Now you got to add it
Honestly,
to
I
your
will
list.
say, now I have to go to New Mexico by way of Iowa. Hey,
It's
West
a
Virginia
direct
to
route.
Iowa down to New Mexico.
So it's not just a place for rest, it's also a place where the spirits are said to linger. So
So
here's the story.
unrest.
An place of unrest,
Unrest.
absolutely. But people have been reporting paranormal activity at Iowa 80, I guess, for a while, especially in the middle of the night. People reported cold spots inside the buildings because it's a working truck stop. People have reported hearing footsteps in the hallways of the restrooms. See, it's not just the, dirty factor.
Mm-hmm.
It's the haunting factor. But especially when no one else is there. And that's like, that's like cliche almost, but that's super creepy that you're in like, rest stop bathrooms are enormous. So if you're in there in the middle of the night and it's pretty much just you, and now you hear footsteps, but you're seeing no one,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
You know, people have reported seeing all kinds of figures and then the figures disappear. This is super creepy, I think. Other drivers have claimed apparently to see ghostly apparitions in the mirrors of the dining area. That's like
That's weird.
especially creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or feel a sudden chill as they eat alone at the counter. But again, high volume of travelers throughout the decades. The nearby highways have been the site of fatal accidents, probably more than a few. So that might be why this place is reported to be haunted. I don't know, but that
Well,
makes sense to
there
me.
there are a lot of stories that are people who die on the roads who don't, because they die so abruptly and so oftentimes unaware that I mean, that's a big thing in paranormal. Oh, they don't know that they're dead. But in some cases, people are just jolted out of their living body and they just kind of continue going where, kind of dazed, confused and whatnot, and they continue going, and they'll go to a place that is familiar, or a place where there are other people. And it is interesting. It's like churches and hospitals. And I would imagine rest stops. Like if you're, and I'm not suggesting
Trying
that,
to figure out where you're going,
right.
like how to get where you're going.
I'm not suggesting that this is what happened in every case or anything like that. But if we consider that kind of the experience and the immediacy of death kind of lingers, or our human experience, our living experience lingers, you're jolted out of your body. You're suddenly in essentially another dimension. Well, you're not in another dimension. You're in another type of physicality or another type of existence, but you're still in this world. You might be like,
Yeah.
I need to get to the rest stop. I don't even know what happened to me. But the last thing I knew, I was driving on this road, and now, so especially if you're a truck driver, or if you're, or if you're someone that's driven this area
Yeah.
before, that it might just naturally be your next, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna sit down. No one's gonna get me a cup of coffee, but I'm gonna be in this familiar environment. Especially if it's been very traumatic.
Yeah, and my assumption is usually these will be residual things rather than intelligent hauntings, but it could be. It's hard to know.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine though residual as far as like walking in a bathroom. I'm not sure.
Yes.
So, because usually residual is either it's something that has happened so often, so many times over so many years. And it's not like multiple people walking in the bathroom. It's like you have
Yeah.
walked that step, 1,000 times over 1,000 nights. You know what I mean? So that's
Could
where
be
you
the
get
person who
residual.
works
It
there and
could be.
cleaned the bathroom,
Absolutely. It
you
could
know?
be. It just seems like, and it could also be, it could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of things. But if people are seeing people in mirrors and things like that, that doesn't sound like residual to me.
Yeah.
Residual doesn't really usually
Kind of
impact the
freaky.
other stuff.
No, super creepy. So that's the kind of go stop portion
Hmm.
of this podcast. I wanted to do one haunted highway. I'm sure you've heard of it. I'm sure you might be intimately familiar with it because, as far as I know, maybe you've driven it. I don't know. But I think other people will be familiar too. So, this is the haunted Route 666, otherwise known as the Devil's Highway,
Hmm.
also known as the Highway to Hell. Very creative, or Satan's Highway.
Hmm.
Going
Go
with the
with the
theme
theme
here.
there. Going with the theme. Hmm.
But for people who are not familiar with this, it's a lonely, deserted stretch of road meandering almost 200 miles, mostly through the desert. And the highway's number, I guess, was a thing for people, understandably. There have been a lot of accidents on the highway. So this became repeated, and people got so worked up about this that people were convinced the highway was cursed. So basically, it's a paved highway. It's 200 miles of highway, and it spans 3 states: New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Um, and it runs north to south through the city of, I'm assuming they say Monticello instead of Monticello, but Monticello, Utah, to the city of Gallup, New Mexico. And it passes through the Navajo Nation and Shiprock, crosses the Colorado border. But you are driving through desert pretty much the whole time. And that in and of itself, when you're talking about a stretch of highway without a lot going on, that in and of itself is dangerous.
Yeah.
You're cautioned to bring extra food and water. And they said keep an eye on your gas tank because you could drive 100 miles without seeing a gas station,
Right.
a single one. So, obviously, if it's very hot, if your air conditioner is running, if your car isn't terribly fuel efficient, or if you get lost, that's not good. So, and they also say this is, it's not recommended to do that trip in the winter. You're at elevations up to 9,000 feet. So you're dealing with snow, black ice, and it's again very remote, probably more remote in the winter. And again, there might not be a place to stop when you need to. So the deal with the Route 666 is that it was renamed in 2003 to Route 491. So US Route 491. And the reason for this, I'm sure that people were probably pushing this for a long time. By the way, I'm not an expert on this, but I am aware that that number symbolizes for many people, the mark of the beast, a prophesied antichrist. I guess in Revelation 13:18, it states, let him who is understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So people were very uncomfortable with this number. And, highways are just named according to like this kind of procedure where they just get numbered, I guess, in sequence, I guess, according to where they are or whatever. I'm not a highway expert, obviously, but the point is, I think there was a pretty logical reason for naming it US Highway 666. People didn't like it. It was changed in 2003 to Route 491. However, there's also been a high fatality rate along the New Mexico portion. So people really do believe that it's cursed. Kathy, you have heard of
Oh,
Route
yeah, yeah, yeah.
666
Hmm.
or not? Okay. Okay. I don't know if everybody has, but basically the question is this a haunted highway or a
Hmm.
cursed highway or whatever? It has been described, doesn't mean it's true, but as one of the most haunted places in America. A lot of weird stuff being reported, bad luck, inexplicable accidents, ghosts, apparitions, specters, various unexplained phenomena. And basically, people have reported everything from a haunted truck, a girl in a white dress, which seems like a ubiquitous haunting kind
Hmm.
of thing. Weird lights, again, common in the desert. Drivers who were there and then disappear. Skinwalkers, and something called Satan's Sedan. But there are hitchhikers who vanish without a trace. The demon trucker, I guess, stalks his prey along the highway. I'm assuming vanishes at some point, or else nobody would be able to report it if it got them and, if it was taking people out. Demon dogs and other supernatural creatures that chase vehicles at high speed for long distances. That's actually really scary. But mysterious lights and balls of fire, and a ghostly semi truck or black sedan attempting to run drivers off the road. So, we could probably do half a season on Route 666.
I wonder if
But yeah,
things have
people
changed
very
since they
unnerved.
renamed it. I wonder if
I'm
people's
assuming truckers must know, though, what it is. I'm sure there's a lot of talk about it.
right, but I mean, they thought it was demonic because of the name, right? So now it's not named that anymore. It's not like, well, they named it 666 because it's the highway to hell. They called it the highway to hell
Right.
because because they named it 666. I mean, I do think that and I think that I think that, you know, tulpas and everyone believing something can actually create something. I do think that. I think that,
Yeah.
people putting belief and putting wishes and putting energy into an idea or even an ideology or anything like that can actually, manifest it. If only on a very casual, on a very kind of, transitory kind of way. But I also think though, like a lot of these, I don't want to be. I have a great deal of admiration and respect for our nation's truckers. I'm not just saying that. You and I have actually talked about this in the
No,
past,
I
where I
mean,
really do. I
you
have.
kind of want to be a
Oh,
trucker
I
too. Like,
don't
you're
want
not kidding.
I don't want to be a trucker, but I do
You
admire
kind of
it.
do.
Well, I want to do what they. I don't want to haul anything. I just want to have that kind of freedom and I do like the idea of kind of the open road and I even like the idea of a truck. But I've always done. I've always been a person. I've always driven, cross country and things like that. And I can get a weird idea in my head and take a a week long trip out to Colorado in the car. I mean, I can do that. I've done that. And truckers have always been enormously protective and what I consider to be a safe, kind of a safe spot. Always been helpful. Even, when I was in my 20s, when I, in my 30s, when I did these things, if I ever ran into any trouble, truckers were always the ones that helped me out. And so, they know where the best breakfasts are. They know, if you're going to pull over on the side of the road and there's a couple of truckers there, you're probably going to be in good company and you're probably going to be safe. So I'm not saying what I'm about to say with any kind of intent,
No.
but there have been a lot of predators in our country who have, in the criminal history of our country, who have used being a trucker or truck routes as a way of, finding victims and evading capture because they follow these kind of truck routes. So there has been certain violence committed against people in certain areas because and reinforcing the ideas of these places as haunted. When we tell these stories, because violence has happened there and someone was killed in a certain place or was taken to a certain place, it also lends a certain amount of I don't know, like it kind of creates folklore around some of the criminal acts that have happened as well. But yeah, I mean these places have seen. They're not just isolated. They have seen violence. They have been places where, like if I was going to scare the hell out of somebody, or I wanted to do that, I mean, Route 666 would not be a place that would seem to me like a pretty good place to do it. It's isolated. It's it's isolated. No one is no one's patrolling it. There's no place for someone to stop and get gas. So if I had kind of nefarious plans, that would be the place that I would do it. You know what I mean? So these ghost stories, they kind of they work on multiple levels
Yeah.
where they create an environment where people can do things that are really bad.
Oh, yeah.
But also, I think there's the isolated nature of a place like that, like a 200-mile strip of desert with no amenities for you. 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, that would be kind of normal, because the idea of traveling would be, you know, you might not be used to amenities, but that's not how we operate now. We don't
Yeah.
have gallons of water in the trunk of our car. We don't carry extra gas in the trunks of our car. And a place like that still requires you to have a certain level of, of preparedness. And I just don't think that
Yeah.
we naturally do that anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, that would totally reasonably amp up somebody's, I'm going to say, being a little hypervigilant just generally.
Yeah.
And like you said, the hypnotic nature of being tired and just having, the lines on the road at night and there's nothing else
And
around, but
knowing that the
also the
place is supposed to
stories.
be, knowing that the place is
Yeah,
supposed to be demonically haunted. Anytime a jackrabbit comes across the road, you could, and which
no,
again, it's
of
not to say
course.
that this stuff isn't happening. I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
All of these things work into it. I can think of a haunted highway that would be worth a really good episode too, in Hawaii, when they built a road. Do you know the story of Pele?
Yes.
Right. So there's actually a couple of roads that they built without asking Pele's permission. And because they literally had years and years and years of accidents and fires and lava flows and rock falls and things like that, until they finally went out and asked her forgiveness. And it actually changed kind of the vibe of the entire place. And there, and this is statistically proven, like they have evidence of how many things happened. And there were fewer fires, there were fewer lava flows, and there were fewer accidents, which I think is really interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue into the last tidbits that I have for you, Kathy.
Excellent.
Because my last thing that I threw in at the last minute, trucker superstitions. And this was also from an article written by Bloom Trucks. It's the one who wrote the other story. So trucker superstitions, again, I'll put the link here so that if there's anything I don't mention, people can go take a look at the article and give a shout out to the author. But basically, one trucker superstition supposedly is that if you're crossing a railroad or a bridge, you're supposed to lift your feet off the floor of the truck, because it's believed if you don't, you'll never meet your true love or get married. That doesn't sound that scary compared to some of the other stuff we've been talking about. I mean, it's like oh, it might be a bummer, but it's not
And
like,
some
oh.
people are like, I am keeping my feet firmly on the ground. I do not want to get married.
I'm okay with that.
I'm
It's
fine. I'm happy
guaranteed.
alone.
Really. But so if you don't lift your feet off the floor, it's not good. Another superstition, relatedly, is that you should honk your horn before entering a bridge or tunnel. To me, that just seems like a safety thing, like so somebody doesn't drive into you. But honking your horn when you enter a bridge or tunnel supposedly is a sign of respect for the lost souls inhabiting the area. I've never heard that, but
And
now
I
I
don't
will
hear
keep
that
it in
many
mind.
horns. We have a lot of tunnels around, I don't recall that.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe they're not finding their true. Maybe they're all single for
Yeah, they're all
life,
single and they don't care about
unhappily
the
paired.
lost souls.
Yeah, really. So another one, and I thought this was very interesting. I have all kinds of thoughts. Is not to drive with $50 bills in your pocket. And I'm kind of thinking most people don't have $50 bills on them anyway. But this basically originated, the roots are tied to NASCAR. And basically in 1964, a NASCAR driver, Joe Weatherly, apparently crashed his race car, while racing, I guess, and died, which is very sad. But after the crash, they found two $50 bills in his wallet. And by the way, in 1964, $100 in your wallet, it's not nothing now, but it would be considerably more.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be considerably more rare to have two 50s in your wallet, even if you're a celebrity or, I don't know. But since then, I guess drivers supposedly have believed that it's bad luck to drive with $50 bills in their wallets.
That's weird.
I would be like, I'll hold the 50s for you because it is bad luck.
Is it
right?
bad luck to have?
Here's a 10.
Is it bad luck to have 3 50s in your pocket?
I think any
4
50s.
50s in my pocket. That's weird. That's weird. And I would wonder if that was really regional. You know what I mean? But who knows?
I don't know. I'd have to ask NASCAR fans. We'll have to do a survey.
Actually, let's also do a shout out to any truckers that we might have. If you do have stories, or you do have, if you have stories, or if you have superstitions, I am dying to hear your stories. I am dying to hear your superstitions. Listen, I'm not going to say that I'm a groupie, but I'm a trucker groupie. I'm a groupie.
She's a trucker groupie.
I'm a groupie.
You're a wannabe.
Yeah, I am. I missed out on this opportunity
you're
in this life.
You're
yeah,
cosplaying
exactly. Yeah, I'm cosplaying. I do have a little truck. I don't have a big truck like you guys,
baby
but
truck.
But someday.
Absolutely.
I'm not
When we
kidding
make it
though.
big, Kathy.
It's like,
No,
I'm not
I
kidding.
believe
I
you.
want to hear your stories.
Yeah, no. And maybe we'll put a poll on our YouTube page, but otherwise people can definitely reach out, let us know, send us a message through our website, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Here's the last one, and this is kind of sweet. It's when you arrive at your destination, thank the truck. So you should pat the dash and thank the truck for a job well done, and the truck will keep running without any problems. And this, I guess, is attributed to the character of Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Jack Burton in Big Trouble in Little China. Was that Kurt Russell?
Yes, it was Kurt Russell.
So just so you know, I have not seen that movie, or if I have, it might have been 100 years ago. I can't believe
that out of your ear.
You know what? Sometimes I get flashes of things. Like
yeah,
it happens
Big Trouble.
with,
but that was an 80s.
flower names.
That was
too.
that was like 84. But it's like, it's interesting to me that like, you think these stories are going to go back to pre-World War II when, they were
No.
It's like, no, it's Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah.
Which we all have to watch now.
Yeah.
But I guess his truck was able to start when he was making his delivery because it somehow became a battle between good and evil. I'm going to have to watch the movies. I'm just doing a terrible job with this. But that's it. That is our episode on ghost stops and haunted highways and trucker lore and so forth. But yeah, let's big shout out to the truckers.
And I would love to hear if they've seen any cryptids too, because that's
I would love to
big
hear
deal.
if they've seen our episodes.
Yes. Yeah, please.
I want to know who's listening and watching.
Is there anybody out there? Please.
tap.
Yeah, exactly. Breaker. And does that do you say that? That's another thing.
Yeah, we want to know, do you still say that? Is that a thing? I think it is.
I think it is too.
But Kathy, this hour, which is what it has been, has flown by. Like we were in a speeding truck.
Yeah,
down,
cruising down Route
from
666.
Running from the hounds of hell. Or Satan's sedan.
Or whatever. Satan's sedan, which I don't know if that's a caddy or what that is.
I don't either. But if anybody knows, please let us know. And I want to let our fans get back to, their travels.
Our beloveds.
Our beloveds.
Yes.
But everyone, thanks so much for watching or listening. Wherever you are, we are so happy to be virtually with you. Kathy, so great to see
That's
you.
great to see you.
And now I'm feeling geared up for my next trip to the Cape, possibly for the opening of Sanctum Paranormal.
Sanctum Paranormal. That's right.
All right. But other than that, everyone, thanks again for joining us. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
Keep exploring.
Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
You've just listened to the Curious Explorers podcast with the Kathy Kelly and Traci Stein. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like, share, follow, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
You've just listened to the Curious Explorers podcast with the Kathy Kelly and Traci Stein. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like, share, follow, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real. It is real.